Deep in the rocky hills of northern Israel, not far from the quiet shores of the Dead Sea, a group of archaeologists made a discovery that no one could have predicted. In the spring of 2023, they were exploring a little-known cave system near Mount Arbel when they noticed something unusual tucked away in a dark corner. It was a small bundle, carefully wrapped in cloth and sealed with what looked like hardened wax or resin. At first glance, it seemed like just another old religious scroll, possibly from one of the early Christian communities that once lived in this area. These types of finds, while rare, are not unheard of. But something about this scroll was different. It was well preserved, even after more than 2,000 years, and the writing inside was still readable. The team brought the scroll back to a laboratory for careful examination. When they gently unrolled it in a safe, temperature-controlled room, they found lines written in Aramaic, the everyday language spoken in Judea during the early 1st century. This was already a surprise, since most religious texts from that time were written in Greek or Latin. Aramaic was the language of the common people, and the use of it suggested that the message was personal, not something meant to be read in temples or shared with large groups. And that's when the real shock came. The writing inside wasn't a sermon, a story, or a gospel. It wasn't even a public message to followers. It was a letter. A personal letter. And it was addressed to someone named Yaakov, the Aramaic name for James, believed by many scholars to be the brother of Jesus. From the moment the translation began, the researchers knew they had something special. The writing style was not like anything found in the Bible or other early Christian texts. It didn't talk about miracles, kings, or crowds. Instead, it shared thoughts and feelings, exhaustion, doubt, and hope. The writer talked about feeling misunderstood, about being burdened with a message that not everyone could carry. He wrote of being separated from people who spoke in his name but didn't truly understand him. It was quiet. It was emotional. It was human. And more than anything, it didn't sound like it was written by a prophet or preacher. It sounded like a man writing to his brother before something big, and possibly terrible, was about to happen. Carbon dating confirmed that the scroll was likely written between 30 and 50 AD, which matches the time when Jesus and his brother James were alive. But this raised a huge question: did Jesus actually write this letter? According to the Bible and most historical records, Jesus never wrote anything down himself. His teachings were passed on by others, his followers, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who wrote them down years later. So, if this letter is real, it changes everything. It shows Jesus not just as a teacher or a divine figure, but as a man who took a moment in private to write something deeply personal. Something he didn't share with the crowds. Something only meant for one person, his brother. Although only part of the letter has been released to the public, the parts we do know have already stirred major reactions. The letter begins with a calm and mysterious line: "Let what is loud grow still, and let what is seen be known for what it hides." It's not a command. It's not a prophecy. It sounds more like a reflection, a quiet thought written by someone who feels the world changing around them. As the letter goes on, it becomes clear that the writer is wrestling with deep emotions. He talks about truth not being something to shout in public, but something that must be carried carefully, like a weight. One line reads, "The truth must be carried, and not all hands are made for its weight." This shows that the writer believed truth was personal and difficult. Not everyone was ready for it. In another part of the letter, he writes about being misunderstood even by those closest to him. They see only the fire, but not the hand that lit it. They repeat my words, but do not wait to hear them. This sounds like someone who knows that their message will be twisted or misunderstood after they are gone. He isn't angry. He's not blaming anyone. But there's a clear sadness, a sense of knowing that his ideas will be changed, used in ways he never intended. And perhaps the most powerful line, quoted in many articles and discussions, comes near the end: "Forgive those who use my name too quickly. They are not thieves. They are hungry." This simple sentence shows deep understanding and compassion. It suggests that even when people make mistakes in his name, they are not doing it out of hate, but out of longing, a desire to connect with something bigger than themselves. When the news of the discovery finally reached the public, it didn't take long for people to start talking. One of the biggest reactions came from an unexpected source, Joe Rogan, host of The Joe Rogan Experience, one of the world's most popular podcasts. On a recent episode, Joe was speaking with a guest who studied early Christianity. When the guest casually mentioned the letter, Joe's reaction was immediate. "Wait, Jesus wrote a letter? No one ever told me that was even possible." You could hear the surprise in his voice. It wasn't over the top or dramatic. It was genuine curiosity. And that's what made the moment so powerful. Joe, like many people, had always thought of Jesus as someone whose words were spoken, not written. The idea that he may have left behind a personal letter completely changed the way Joe, and likely his millions of listeners, thought about Jesus. Joe asked thoughtful questions. Why wasn't this known before? Why didn't anyone talk about the chance that Jesus might have written something? His guest explained that most of what we know about Jesus comes from oral tradition, stories passed down by word of mouth, then written later by others. But if this letter is real, it shows that Jesus may have written at least one thing, and kept it private. Joe then brought up other lost or hidden texts like the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary, which were once considered important by some early Christians but were later removed from the Bible. He wasn't trying to stir up controversy. He just wanted to understand. That moment of quiet reflection, on such a massive platform, helped bring the story to a much bigger audience. What makes this letter so powerful isn't just the idea that it might have been written by Jesus. It's the tone. The message. The feeling that, for once, we might be hearing his thoughts directly, not through stories or interpretations, but in his own words. There are no miracles in the letter. No talk of Rome or politics. No mention of crucifixion or resurrection. Just simple thoughts, written in a soft voice, to someone he trusted deeply. The letter doesn't try to prove anything. It doesn't command people to believe. It simply offers a glimpse into the mind of a man who knew something big was about to happen and wanted to say something real before it did. Some scholars believe the letter was hidden on purpose, maybe to protect it during times of persecution. Others think it was simply forgotten or lost, only to be found centuries later when the world was ready to hear it. Either way, the letter's appearance now, after 2,000 years, feels like more than just luck. It feels like a message meant to be heard in a time when people are still arguing about what Jesus said and what he meant. But this letter doesn't argue. It doesn't preach. It reflects. It breathes. And for many, that's what makes it so special. Even with the scientific tests confirming the scroll's age, and the detailed translation work showing its unique language and tone, some people still doubt its origin. That's normal for discoveries like this. Some believe it could be a forgery, made to look ancient using modern tools. But experts say the ink, the sealing method, and the material are too specific to fake. If it is a fake, it would have to be the most advanced forgery ever made, something unlikely to come from ancient times. But if it's real, then this scroll could be one of the most important discoveries in Christian history. What matters most may not be whether the letter is proven 100% authentic. What matters is the message it carries. It reminds us that behind all the sermons and stories, Jesus was also a man, a brother, a thinker, someone who felt deeply and worried about how his words would be remembered. This letter, whether from Jesus or inspired by him, gives us something we rarely see: quiet honesty. In a noisy world, that silence can say more than 1,000 sermons. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point all along. After the news of the letter broke, reactions from scholars and theologians started pouring in. Some were excited, calling it the most important religious discovery since the Dead Sea Scrolls. Others were more cautious. They didn't want to jump to conclusions without solid evidence. Most agreed on one thing: this letter, whether truly written by Jesus or not, deserved serious study. Leading universities and religious institutions started reviewing the materials. Linguistic experts from around the world began comparing the scroll's grammar, phrasing, and symbols to other known documents from that time. One scholar, Dr. Lena Moritz from the University of Oxford said the letter could be the missing link that connects early oral traditions with a more personal side of Jesus. She added, even if it's not written by Jesus himself, it gives us a glimpse into how early followers saw him, not just as a leader, but as a man struggling with his role and responsibilities. On the other hand, some more traditional scholars were skeptical. They pointed out that the early Christian world was full of writings claiming to be from Jesus or his disciples. Many of these were dismissed as fake centuries ago. So, they urge caution, saying we should avoid rewriting history without solid, peer-reviewed research. Even though the letter came from an ancient time, its message feels incredibly relevant today. The world is more divided than ever when it comes to religion. People argue over who is right, what Jesus meant, and how his teachings should be followed. But this letter doesn't take sides. It doesn't tell people they're wrong. It doesn't demand belief or control. Instead, it talks about understanding, forgiveness, and the pain of being misunderstood. These are feelings we can all relate to, whether we are religious or not. What if it just got lost in time? What if it wasn't hidden, just overlooked? His guest agreed. That's the real mystery. This scroll might not have been deliberately buried or erased. It might have simply survived by accident, sealed in wax, untouched for 2,000 years. Waiting in silence. What hit home for Joe and his audience wasn't just the content of the letter. It was the idea that history can still surprise us. That something so small, a single scroll, a single moment of handwriting, could make us stop and rethink everything we thought we knew. That's what JRE has always done best. It doesn't push conclusions. It lets conversations breathe. In this one, it left room for wonder, for respect, for the unsettling idea that sometimes the past isn't done talking. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not whether the letter is authentic, but that it even exists. That opened a space, even for a few minutes, where Joe and millions of listeners sat quietly and asked, what if? Was it really meant to be found? When something is buried deep inside a cave, sealed with wax, and hidden among rocks that haven't been disturbed for 2,000 years, it's hard not to ask the obvious. Was this letter ever supposed to see the light of day? That's the question many scholars are quietly asking about the recently uncovered Aramaic letter near Mount Arbel, allegedly written by Jesus to his brother James. Unlike many ancient scrolls and letters meant for circulation or public teaching, this document had a different feel. From the way it was stored, folded tightly, wrapped in a cloth, and sealed with natural wax, it looked more like something someone wanted to protect, not proclaim, not for crowds, not for scribes, maybe not even for history. Dr. Elias Carman, a historian specializing in Judean burial practices, remarked in a JRE podcast follow-up interview, this wasn't just hidden, it was entombed. The placement and preservation suggest the writer seems to know that his words will be misused or taken out of context. But instead of anger, he shows compassion. Forgive those who use my name too quickly, he writes. That sentence alone has sparked a lot of discussion online. It challenges people to think about how they use religion, not as a weapon, but as a way to heal. In a time when social media spreads information and misinformation so fast, this kind of quiet, thoughtful wisdom feels like a breath of fresh air. People are tired of arguments. They're searching for truth. And this letter, whether real or symbolic, speaks directly to that longing. One of the biggest questions this discovery raises is, could there be more? If one letter from Jesus survived all this time, hidden in a cave, could others still be out there? Historians and treasure hunters alike are now looking at other unexplored caves in the region. Some believe there may be entire scrolls, letters, or journals that were written by early Christians and buried during times of persecution. During the first few centuries after Jesus' death, his followers were often hunted or punished by Roman authorities. To protect their writings and their message, they hid them in places that were hard to find. Some scrolls may have been lost forever. Others might still be hidden in desert caves, sealed jars, or even buried beneath ancient ruins. Experts say that if more letters or writings are found, especially ones that match the language and tone of this scroll, it could completely change what we know about early Christianity. We might learn more about Jesus' personal life, his relationship with his family, and his inner thoughts. These discoveries wouldn't replace the Bible but could add new depth to our understanding of the man behind the message. Interestingly, the letter has sparked different reactions from people across many faiths. Some Christians see it as a miracle, a sign that more truth is being revealed just when the world needs it most. Others are more careful, saying they need time to study it before accepting it as real. Some worry that it could be used to confuse believers or create division. But in many churches and online faith communities, people are talking, not arguing, but reflecting. They're asking deep questions, like, what if Jesus really did leave behind a private message? And what does that mean for my faith? Outside of Christianity, people from Jewish, Muslim, and secular backgrounds are also interested in the scroll. Many Muslims, for example, respect Jesus as a prophet and are curious about the letter's contents. Scholars from different religious backgrounds are even working together to analyze the scroll, showing that curiosity and respect can cross religious boundaries. In some cases, this discovery is helping to bring people closer, not further apart. That's something rare and beautiful in today's divided world. One of the most touching things about the letter is how quiet it is. In a world full of noise, political debates, social media fights, 24/7 news, the idea of a letter that whispers instead of shouts feels powerful. The letter begins with a call for silence, let what is loud grow still. That line alone invites us to pause, breathe, and listen. It's not trying to control anyone. It's simply asking us to be present. To look deeper. To understand rather than judge. This kind of message doesn't just belong to history. It belongs to right now. Whether you're religious or not, there's something healing about that kind of message. It reminds us that even 2,000 years ago, people struggled with the same things we do, being misunderstood, feeling overwhelmed, wanting to be heard. The letter may have been written in a cave in ancient Israel, but its words echo in our modern lives. And maybe that's why it was found now. Because maybe now is when we're finally ready to hear it.